Welcome again to Bungalows for Bachelors. We are going to continue on with this situation here. We have a rafter starting from the wall going up to the ridge, and a ceiling joist starting from some other wall in here and landing on our rafter. How do we deal with this? Well, I can tell you. The first thing we got to know is some numbers from the International Residential Code, and they're right here. And we need to know what these numbers mean. So the first thing is we have this value, HC over HR. That's what this is here for. That's at the top of the table. That's what that is. The table is right here. And this is the factor. Okay, so we need to determine HC over HR from the plans and the house shape. And that's going to tell us what factor we're going to multiply the original allowed span with. So if I know the regular span for 2x6s, 24 inches on center, southern yellow pine number 2, was 11 feet as a rafter, then I am going 11 feet horizontal as a rafter. And I have a situation where the HC over HR is 1/3. I'm going to multiply that 11 feet by 0.67, and that's my new allowed span without support. So I need to figure out what that is. So first I need to know the distance horizontally from the wall to my ridge. So I'm going to go back to my floor plan for that, and I'm going to measure inside of wall support to the ridge, 10.5 feet. Perfect. All right. So I know it's 10.5 feet. And if this is a regular situation, I could use those, 2x6s at 24 inches on center, and that would be great. But I've got extra weight on it, and so I got to figure out something else. So 10'6" is my number that I'm working with here. So let's figure out the HC over HR value. Let me explain what that is. So HC over HR is referring to this. Say that that's the height of my ceiling joist is HC above the wall. And that is the height of my rafter, roughly above the wall. All right. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the wall height, I'm taking the height to the top of the ceiling joist, taking the wall height to the height of the peak of the rafter. Okay. This is HC, height of ceiling joist. This is HR, height of rafter above the wall. Okay. Now, normally, when the ceiling joist is on the wall, this number is either 0 or it's very small, right? When I look at this table, I'm looking at this value, say 1/3. So when this is 1/3, what that's saying is the ceiling joist is exactly 1/3 the distance from the top of the wall to the peak, because HC divided by HR, if that gives me a 1:3 ratio, then I know that 1/3, I know this is 1/3 of this number. So in the worst case scenario, and we're not allowed to use this trick above this situation without additional bracing or things like that. So what do some of the other factors tell us? Well, as this ratio gets smaller and smaller, the factor we need to multiply our allowed span by gets bigger and closer to 1. When the number is 1, it means that we don't need to factor anymore and the strength is effectively unaffected. That was an interesting thing to say. Effectively affected. Okay, so this is a less than or equal to sign. And basically this is saying when that ratio is smaller than 1 over 7.5, then it makes essentially no difference. What I might be doing here is, even though I'm raising my ceiling joist up a little bit and it's not sitting on the wall and I'm putting the weight on the rafter, if this ratio is smaller than 1/7.5, it doesn't matter. It's not going to affect the rafter. So these are my actual numbers. Let's see what my actual ratio is in this situation. Let's see how I'm going to do this here. Okay, so we're going to take 7 divided by 12 is 0.58. Add it to 2. So this is 2.58, technically 2.58, 7 2 3/4. Take 3, so that's 2.75 inches divided by 12. Add that to 7 feet. We got 7.23 roughly. 7.23 feet here. So we'll take 2.58, divide it by 7.23, and that gets us 0.35, which is over 1/3. 0.35 is our HC over HR. Remember, 1/3 would be 0.33333. And this is over that. So what we're seeing here is we are actually not inside this table, technically, based on my hip shot dimensions here. Now, what I happen to know is that these are hip shot dimensions here, and I'm basically at 1/3. So what I'm going to do is use 1/3, because that's really close to this, and I'm probably just measured. I could have just measured this a little bit off. So if it was significantly above 1/3, we'd have a problem and do something different, but it's very close. It could be measurement error. So we're going to use 0.67. All right. So we know that when those rafters are being loaded like that, are we going to take the allowed 11-foot span from the table, if we want to use 2x6s, that is, 11-foot span from the table, multiply it by 0.67, and our new allowed span is 7.37. Oh, come on. 7.37 feet, okay? Now, if I bump up the 2x8s, I believe it's like 1311 or something, so I'm just going to say 14 feet for here. Multiply that by 0.67, gets us 9.38. Okay, so I am only allowed to go horizontally 7.37 feet with a 2x6 before I need support. Now I can still do it. I can still frame it like this. I just need to add a beam or something in here to support this. So let's think about how that will work in our situation, because it's usually best to use 2x6s for your rafters if you can do that. It'll save you money. You don't want to start sizing up all your rafters if you can avoid it. So let's try it. 7.37 feet. Let's say around 7 feet. So we're going to go back to here and start at the front and look at our situation. In this situation, we have the rafters going from here to the ridge, but that was a different ridge. And technically, okay. So technically, in this situation, the HC over HR is even worse than 1/3, because now I'm loading my rafters here. I'm loading them like in a bigger portion of my triangle. Actually, you know what I need to do? Oh, never mind. This was the 1/3. I looked at the wrong ridge. Okay, so for this little portion is what I just figured out. That was the 7-foot one. So what I know is I could do a few things here. Because this is such a small little piece, I could do something special to avoid needing to put, what I don't want to do is have to put another beam up in here just to hold up like 2 or 3 rafters. That's kind of silly. So what can I do? Well, I can change the spacing of the rafters in this one spot. And the reason I want to use 12-inch on center spacing is it's really not going to disrupt my 24-inch on center spacing on the rest of the roof in terms of the numbers and the dimensions and things. So I'm basically going to be start adding in rafters. And for each one of those that I do, I'm also going to like double the ceiling joist. So what I'm going to do here is this. I'm going to say double rafter, and ceiling joist. 12-inch on center. All right, so that's what that means, and that's going to look kind of funny. Whatever. Okay. So in this little area, that's what I'm going to do. And on this side, it's not as big of a deal because I've got a beam here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line that's going to represent a purlin line. So I've got rafters starting at the wall. They're coming up to the ridge right there. And I want to brace them on this beam. So what I'm going to do is I could draw a line on this, but it doesn't look as clean. And effectively, that's where I can put my braces. But what I'm going to just symbolize it with this guy here. And I'm going to say, I want this to be braced. Oh, man. I want it to be braced to this beam. So what I'm saying is this is a purlin now. Okay, this is a board that it's going to be turned horizontally in the roof. And it's going to go up underneath the rafters and it will be braced to the beam. So now my effective span for these rafters, they're working out from here to here, which is 4'10", and then they're working out from here to here. That's what the spans are for the loads they're carrying. So that's fine. I can deal with that. That takes care of that side. But on this side, I'm going to change that spacing up, and I'm going to end up with a 12-inch on center rafter. So I'm going to go 12 inches in, rafter and ceiling joist, 12 inches in, rafter and ceiling joist, 12 inches in, rafter and ceiling joist. Okay. And that's only going to last me up until I get to the end of this roof shape, and then it won't matter anymore. All right. So that takes care of that situation. I don't need any extra support under here for that reason. So what about in the rest of the primary bedroom? I've got a rafter that's going to go from the wall all the way up to this ridge. So I need to recalculate my HC over HR ratio. So what do I got? Well, the first one I did was just this little portion that's in this front room. So the first portion I did was in the roof that's over the front room. And now I need to take care of the one from this wall up to this new ridge. So I can probably just grab this and drag it up. That's approximately there. So now I have 9 feet 8 inches. Okay, so let's do my new ratio. I've got the 2'7", and I've got 9'8". Well, the 2'7" I already figured out was 2.58 feet. 9'8", 8 is 2/3. So 9.66. So 2.58 feet divided by 9.66 feet is 0.267. So this is 9.267 feet. Okay, so what's my ratio? Oh, sorry, no, that was not right. That was not correct. It was 9.666. My ratio for this whole guy, my HC over HR is 0.267. We'll just round to 0.27 because measurements are not that accurate anyway. So 0.27. So which one of these is it? Well, 1/4 is 0.25. and our measurements aren't that accurate, like I just said. So honestly, we're pretty close to a quarter right now. So let's use that one. So that's 0.76 is our number. That's how we're affected. So we need to account for that with our span. So if we want to use those 2x6s, then our allowed span for those 2x6s is 11 feet times 0.76. Our new allowed span is 8.63. Sorry, 8.36 feet. Okay, that's our horizontal distance we can go before needing support. So let's go back up to the plan. Let's take a look. Now we know from the back wall all the way to this spot right here is the same framing except for this dormer. We've got this rafter thing going on with the ceiling joist except for this dormer. It's flat ceiling here. So from the wall in, because I've got nothing to support over here, so I want to take my span from this side. It was 8'6" or something. What was that number? 8.3. Let's see, 0.3 is about a third, so it's the 8'4" mark. Somewhere in there, close enough. Okay. So about that distance is as far as I can go before needing to support my rafters. So in this little section right here, I've got a rafter running from the wall up to the, running from the wall up to the ridge. And right here is where I need to hold up that rafter because it's got too much weight being added from right here. And I can't make it all the way to the ridge. Oops, it goes all the way to the ridge here. All right. So because of that, I am going to draw a purlin line right here. And it doesn't have to like necessarily extend exactly this full distance. At the end of the day, once the rafters are up, I'm going to know which rafters need to be supported because I'm just going to look at them. And there's going to be some rafters that aren't supported and some that are. So I just need to do that. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at this and I'm going to say, all right, I'm supporting my rafters here. So I'm going to continue this purlin line. So once I've added a purlin line, I need to add the braces that are going to hold up that purlin. They follow the same 4 foot on center rule as the ridge. So I'm going to draw a 4 foot. Where'd it go? Oh, I messed it up. Okay, I got a 4 foot circle. So looks like I'm probably going to need 2 or 3 braces. So it's going to depend exactly on where my purlin starts and ends when I actually frame it. But I need roughly 3 braces here. So I'm just going to move that out of the way. So I'm going to get my braces in here. One on the end for the purlin to the beam. One in the middle from the purlin to the beam. One on the other end of the purlin to the beam. Well, in this case, I could put it on the wall. It doesn't really make a difference because I'm using uniform loads later on anyway. All right. Okay. So that takes care of that situation. I now know that my rafters and ceiling joists in here are going to be held up if I put this purlin in here, and I'm hunky-dory. I'm good to go. Actually, I'm going to leave that dimension because that's telling me approximately on my plan what I should focus on in terms of where to put this thing. Okay. So now let's take a look up here. I'm actually going to copy this dimension because it's serving the same purpose in this room. And I'm going to copy this line. And this wall is where the ceiling slope thing goes on again. So this is where my rafter thing picks up because this is my dormer happens right here. So right outside this wall is where this pattern picks up again. So that's my brace. My purlin is going to be along that line. So now I need to brace that. So this end, it could be just set on the wall, nothing crazy there. And then I'm going to take my 4-foot rule, come in here, and I'm going to add a brace. Okay, so this is a railing. This is not a wall. So I need to think about something here. Do I have the ability, first of all, to brace over to this wall? Because if I can, that's great. If that's not more than 45, I would like to do that. Now that does look like a lot, but we have a steep pitch, so maybe it's possible. Maybe it's not. Let's analyze. So here's how we'd analyze. This roof starts at 7 feet because it does. 7-foot plate height is where this roof pitch starts. I know that wall in there is a 9-foot height. So here's we're going to do some math. Okay. I need to figure out how high this point is above this point. That's all I'm concerned with. So the first thing I need to know, if I'm starting at 7 feet and I'm going up the roof to here, what is that change in height? Well, what is the distance? Well, it's 8'3". We've already got that. Okay, so I'm going at a 10-12 pitch. If I go 12 inches horizontally, I go 10 inches up. If I go, what is that number? 8'3", that's 8.25 feet. 8.25 feet, I get how many feet up? So here's how you do this. You cross multiply, right? Multiply those guys together and set them on an equation. So 10 times 8.25 equals 12 times some number we want to know. So we're just going to divide both sides by 12. That cancels out. So now our mystery number is whatever this guy is. So let's do that in the calculator. 10 times, well, that's just 82.5 divided by 12. 6.875. All right, so we gained 6.875 feet as we went up, but we kind of are going to lose a little bit of height from the purlin. Let's just kind of give us some wiggle room here. Let's say we have 6 feet of clearance. If we have 6 feet of clearance, that means we have 6 feet of horizontal run. Well, actually, here's the trick here. That would mean we have 6 feet of horizontal run. However, do we actually have 6 feet of clearance above the 9-foot wall? Because we're bracing on the 9-foot wall. But that was a 7-foot wall. So we lost 2 feet because this wall's taller. So I actually know that I only have, let's say I had 6 feet up. I lost 2 feet because of the ceiling height change, the wall height difference. So I only actually have 4 feet above the 9-foot wall. So I can tell you without a fact, without a doubt, that I cannot reach this wall because there's my 4-foot circle right there. All right, so this brace ain't going to work. I can reach that far because 4 feet with a 45-degree angle, but I can't go all this way. So, excuse me. What does that mean? It means we need a beam. And the only way to do this reasonably is to take a beam from this wall, run all the way over to here. So we're going to do that. What in the world? Okay. So there's a beam. Alrighty. So now let's follow our bracing rule and we're just going to set our weight on our beam and everybody will be okay. And that's less than 4 feet. So let's just put one in the middle of that span. Now, realistically, the purlin's going to stop not in the wall. It's going to stop like somewhere over here maybe, or it'll stop on the last rafter, whatever, but you get the idea. Okay. So that takes care of these rafters. Now, on this right side, what do we got going on here? So we need to recalculate, because we have a new wall height, different ridge height. We got to recalculate our HC over HR here. Now, because of the proportionality and similar triangles thing, I really the HC over HR, I'm going to see it on the plan because I'm going to see this distance and I'm going to see this distance. It's the same thing. It's just the other like legs of the triangle, but I know the roof is all one pitch. So this is going to give me the same HC over HR. I could do it that way, but I'm going to do it the other way just so you can see it. Okay. And I think this one's going to be sort of problematic because it's a big chunk to take out of a ceiling, and we're going to might possibly solve that a little bit differently. I'm going to use a different strategy. So let's go back to here. All right, so what's the thing under consideration? We have starting at this wall, we go to the ridge, that's our rafter, and our ceiling plane is coming in at 9 feet. So the situation we have here is that somewhere in here is a wall that's holding, oops, you can go away. That's not what I wanted to do. Somewhere in here is a wall that's holding some ceiling joist, which is great. So there's not like a ton. So normally when this HC over HR thing is determined, it's determined with this situation. I have a wall, a ceiling, and a roof. And let's say, I guess the ceiling, it wouldn't be flat here. Let's say the ceiling was raised. Then that distance was the HC, and that distance was the HR. So that normally means when this is done, it's assuming you have this big open span all the way from the roof to the ceiling, and it's this whole span here. Now, I don't have that because what this is assuming is that the ceiling joist right here is holding this the same. Let's see how to describe this. The tributary area would be, this halfway weight, and the other half goes to the other wall, right? So, and the roof is the same thing. The roof is assuming that whatever this span is, I'm holding all that ceiling weight. So in this case, the span from the ridge to the wall is that, but I'm not holding this ceiling over here. It's sitting on a wall. I'm also not holding this part of the ceiling because it's halfway from the wall to the roof. So what that means to me is that this portion of ceiling is the only little tiny piece that I'm holding. Now, assuming I drew this wall in the right spot, right? So what that means to me is that the amount of ceiling that's actually on this thing is going to be almost nothing. So I'm going to go back to my floor plan and look at the real spacing of things. And I'm going to see that right here, it's even better right here, right? So I got ceiling sitting on this, tying into this, which means I only have approximately 2 feet of ceiling sitting on my rafter. So that's going to basically not affect my rafter at all. And then on the worst case scenario, which is in the bathroom, so this is probably about 3 feet of ceiling, and this is probably like 5 feet, 4 feet, something like that. Let's get a number on it. So here's how I'm going to do this. 4'9", okay? So this one's closer to being like the discussed design thing. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat this like I don't have that problem, and I'm going to just put a brace as close as I can to the point that needs support. And it's going to effectively not make a difference. Everything's going to be over-designed when I'm done. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to here to show you what I'm going to do in this view. So I'm going to go to the backside view. So we're dealing with this left side of the house here, which is actually the right side of the house, because this is the back view. So what I've got going on is rafter to ridge, and I've got this ceiling running across this whole thing, And somewhere in here I had a 4 foot, almost 5 foot distance. Let's say there's a wall right here. Oops, that's not a line. Let's say there was a wall right here or so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install a beam right in here or wherever I can, and I'm going to put a purlin on it, or I'm going to brace all these rafters on it, right? So I'm going to just stick a beam right up, or I mean, you could even go into here, basically. The point is, I'm going to pick up the weight and support the rafter along here so that when we add the extra weight from the ceiling right there, even if it's just a little bit, that weight's not going to make a difference in the effective span of the rafter, which is here to here, right? So adding a little bit of weight close to the end of the span doesn't make hardly any difference. So that's what I'm going to do, and that's how I'm going to solve this particular problem. This is a tricky house. Anytime you deal with these rafters and ceiling slope things going on, it really makes it a pain. And it's not done nearly as often these days. This is a older style design, but okay. So let's take care of that then. So I'm not concerned with my factors. I'm just going to get my beams in here and be concerned with that if I need beams. Okay, so I said I was going to add a beam. So the reality is I don't necessarily have to add a beam. What I really meant was I'm just going to add support. So let's start here in the front. I want to add support to my rafters. It doesn't matter how I support them. I just want them supported close to this joint here. And let's say I want to use this wall for bracing. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, I happen to know that if I start at this wall for bracing, I can go at a 45-degree angle up as with a brace, and I'm good with that. So I need to figure out approximately where that purlin is going to meet this this roof slope. So this roof is sloping up at a 10-12. This line right here means this is saying the ceiling is exactly in line with where the ceiling's at on this wall. So if my pitch was a 12-12 and it was exactly 45 degrees, then I would know exactly halfway between here and here is where that spot is, where I could come up at a 45-degree angle and my roof. But the roof's not at a 45, it's just close. So I'm going to assume slightly more left of it, and I'm going to draw my purlin line. I'm going to put it approximately right here. Okay? And I'm going to take this all the way over to here. So what I'm doing is that's as close as I can get. Well, you know what? That's not true. That's only true for right there. Actually, instead of deleting it, I'm going to do it right here. So this one's the one I want for this spot right here because that's where my braces are going to go. I want to brace the ends of the purlin and then look at the spacing. I probably deleted my circle, didn't I? And then I want to look at the spacing here. Okay, one brace in the middle would be plenty here, so I'll do that. Okay, so what I did here is I took some of I added a purlin support as close as I could to this, and I set that weight down on this wall so I know that everything's happy hunky-dory in here. There's no crazy problems. And now the span from the ridge to the purlin is like 6 feet. So yeah, all my 2x6s are just fine here. So I'm adding effectively just a tiny, tiny bit of weight from the ceiling here. And that's going to lower my span, but I just dropped my span to like 6 or 7 feet. So I'm well within my allowable use here. So what about this little spot right here? Well, what I'm going to probably end up doing is there's going to be some layout of rafters on here. I'm going to brace them individually because it's so short. So over my rafter lands, I'm going to draw it in here. That way I know what I'm doing later on. So I had a rafter that comes down this way and one that comes down this way. Let's say that's where they landed. Then I'm going to follow the same rule, add my brace, add my brace. I'm drawing them at an angle so it's clear that they're braces. They don't have to be at an angle in real world. Okay, now the primary bath, I got to go through the rest of that. So I'm now going to brace on this wall, and I'm going to apply the same approximate 45-degree angle rule. So the roof slope is not quite 45. So I'm going to go to the middle between the wall and this line, and I'm going to move over slightly to the left. And I'm going to copy this guy. So somewhere about here is where I can get that purlin line and still maintain that 45-degree angle back to my wall. So I need to brace the end. Now, if I'm this close to this wall, I might as well use it. So boom. And I deleted my circle again because I like to delete the things that are useful to me. And I'm going to brace this end. Of course, I want to miss the door. And I'll do this again. Okay. So I need a brace right here. I need a brace right here. And that's probably about 4 feet. It's kind of stretching 4 feet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this brace, and it was at the end. This is all going to depend on my exact rafter layout, so not a big deal. Okay, so that's approximately where I'm going to put those braces for the purlins. Okay, so now what do I know? I know my rafters have been all supported properly. So not only are my rafters good to go, and this ridge was taken care of here, but I need to take care of this blue ridge now. This one coming all the way down here. And that's not going to be too hard, I think. I think. Yeah, it's not going to be too hard. So this ridge, I want to put it on this beam. So this beam is almost directly below this ridge, and I've got a bunch of height to work with here. So I know that I'm clear. I'm going to undelete that circle that I know I just deleted and put it where I want to use it. So 4 feet in from the start of my ridge, my first brace, boom, is going to go down to my beam. My next brace is going to go down to my wall, because the wall is just basically in the same spot as the beam in terms of height. And I'm going to keep going. I need another brace right here. So I'm going to brace to the wall because I don't want to put it on the beam if I can avoid it. So now remember that when I was at this trying to support this pink purlin right here, I had that 4-foot height to the 9-foot wall. Well, I know that the blue ridge is higher than the purlin because I'm going up the roof, and this 9-foot wall didn't move. So I've got more than a 4-foot range because I went up the roof, and this wall's within 4 feet. So I know I can brace to it without modifying or without violating my 4-foot rule. So 4 feet down the ridge from the last support is here. Add another one here to the wall, and the ridge is supported inside the wall, so I'm not concerned with that. And that's about a 4-foot spacing, so I'm happy there. Oops, you know what? I'm done the circle now. Okay, so I got the ridge supported, all my rafters are supported. My roof framing layout is done for the second floor. Yay! What about this part? What about the first floor? Well, this is actually going to be quite simple. This porch is a flat ceiling and it's a steep roof. So whatever little ridge, actually I'm going to copy. Whatever little ridge exists right here to here, I can just brace down onto this wall. All right, so that ridge is braced to here, and this is a super short span for my 2x6s. There's no special geometry here. I'm starting at the wall and I'm going to here, and that spans 7'11". I know I can go 11 feet with that 2x6 24-inch on center rafter. So I'm going to do that. Okay. So that takes care of the front porch. And then the living space is vaulted, which only means one thing. It means it has to be a beam from here to here. And you ask, well, what's going to support up this end? Well, there's probably going to be another beam that is from this wall to this wall right there. So this one's going to sit on that one. So these are going to be some significant beams, most likely. But we just know that they're there. That's what they're going to be. We'll calculate them later. So that holds up this whole roof. I'm happy with that. This is not extra crazy weight. This is just like blocking and stuff for the HVAC that's going to come through that chase, the empty part in the framing. Okay. What about the back of the house? Well, my rafters are going to start on the wall. They're going to slope down and land on this wall. So what's that span? There's no dimension on here that's telling me really. So let me just grab this tool. 7'5". Okay, so I'm fine. I can go 11 feet with those 2x6s, so I got plenty. So I'm just going to put my 2x6s in, and everything's all going to be fine. All right, so now what I need to know, so now what I do know is that I am going to write this in here. All rafters are 2x6 Southern Yellow Pine number 2 at 24 inches on center. That's what I'm writing. And I'll make an exception here. Except where shown different. Okay, so that's telling me what my rafter sizes are on this whole project. Except, remember, in this one little spot right here, just so I didn't have to support because of this extra ceiling weight. Okay, so I'm just going to do 12 inches on center in that spot. Otherwise, everything else is good to go. And with that, my friends, the roof framing layout is complete.